I told the pilot, look, you need to land this plane. I have I have a podcast recording, my friend. And he said, no problem, Mr. Lane, and here we are. So
welcome to the VC React podcast. Every week, we bring you insights and reactions from top VCs, reacting to weekly news on startups, VC funds, and investment rounds. We have a great episode for you today with three amazing VCs. Abdullah AlEssa, Investment Associate at Vision Ventures, Jamil Shinawi, Founding Partner at Actual VC, and Kaan Akın, Managing Partner and CCO at Tenity. In the video description, you can find more details on our guests, their LinkedIn profiles, and links to their companies' websites. Our weekly news are brought to you by FWDstart, a twice-weekly newsletter that breaks down what's happening in the MENA startup, VC, and tech space. And as always, from FWDstart, we have my co-host, Jamil, who is in an airport right now. Jamie, what's happening this week? And thank you so much for joining us from an airport.
this is the level of commitment we all need to aspire to. I told the pilot, look, you need to land this plane. I have I have a podcast recording, my friend. And he said, no problem, Mr. Lane, and here we are. So look, I think the big thing this week is probably FII. So maybe let's start there. But maybe first things first. Was anyone here at FII this week? Jamil, tell us, what was it like?
What I really love this year is that it's not just the FII, but everything around it. So a couple of days before FII, there was Tech Shift by Aramco as well, which was an amazing event, exclusively techies, and it was done in Itra, in Dhahran. And then around FII, there were a lot of side events as well, and a lot of receptions, a lot of get-togethers. Even 500 had a few events for their VC and locked alumni. Stanford Saudi had a couple of events. YPO had a couple of events, which also coincides with YPO's global conference as well in Dubai. So the whole region is buzzing with events, but FII itself, I think they've overdone themselves again this year. Content-wise, attendance-wise, quality of attendees as well. I mean, impressive.
I genuinely think that this year it was amazing, and as Jamil said, Saudi had a unique thing with FII and Leap, and every year these events that bring a lot of international presence. There's a lot of different events around it, and it's every time it was a bit amazing, honestly. Especially this year, honestly, I think the best FII we have attended, and it's only getting better, mashallah.
And I'm sure for everybody watching social media, there are a couple of really good reels about Mayoshi-san's what he was talking about, the 10 trillion, 1 trillion GDP investment in AI. So there were some really strong messages being sent on the future of AI. And he said, even if 5% of it is usable and down the line, that's ROI. So these are very strong words and messages from somebody who is an OG, I mean, at the end of the day. So it got me thinking, that's for sure.
Vision Fund 3 on the way. I wonder, will this be the one? Well, yeah, look, I think we could talk about FI for days. We'll probably be discussing more that's come from it next week too, but let's maybe start with an announcement from the first day, which related, I suppose, to a renewed focus on domestic investment and AI, which I suppose is a departure maybe from previous years. So on the first day of the conference, it was announced that they're planning to reduce foreign investment to around a fifth of its global assets. This is Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. So the priority is doubling down on domestic funding and artificial intelligence. Initially, it was less than 2% of that. Initially, 2% of investments internationally, but that then increased to 30%. I think the goal now is to bring that down to closer to about 18 to 20%. So that is a pretty significant shift in strategy. And really, I think the core takeaway was, I guess, AI kind of as an economic driver. So I think PIF are projecting AI's potential to contribute about 20 trillion to the global economy by 2030. And I think They were really trying to position themselves as Saudi's, low cost energy, expansive land, renewable energy capabilities, could position it to become a global AI hub and not necessarily just a regional one. And look, I might leave that there for now. We'll come to Saudi Aramco's venture capital arm as well. They've allocated 100 million to invest in AI startups too. But maybe let's focus first just on the domestic focus for PIF.
Yeah, the domestic focus. I'm so happy that we have two VCs from Saudi in this episode, because I have questions for you here. So my understanding is there are two main funds in Saudi: the Public Investment Fund, PIF, and then there's the National Development Fund, NDF. So PIF is Saudi's sovereign wealth fund, focusing on growing Saudi Arabia's wealth through investments in both domestic and global markets, right? And PIF's mandate is largely focused on generating long-term financial returns. PIF invested in Uber, Lucid Motors, and many other companies. And they invested in almost all of the giga real estate projects in Saudi. They also created a fund of fund, Sanabil and Jeddah. Sanabil is more international, Jeddah is more local, etc. Now, NDF is more developmental, right? It's focusing only in Saudi. They created SVC, which is a fund of fund that's mandated to develop the ecosystem in Saudi, and it's not purely financially driven. Of course, the big money is with PIF. So with this move to reduce foreign investments and pump more capital inwards, especially with AI and tech, are we going to see new growth or late stage funds or more Saudi IPOs? Or are we going to see more focus on bringing large AI companies from Korea, from the US, or from Taiwan into the country, like what they did with Lucid Motors? Or maybe create new mega companies from scratch inside Saudi and attract talent? What do you think would happen? If you have control of this and you have control on the strategy, what would you do?
I definitely would look for regional integration, because the regional markets, all of them are small. I mean, Saudi is a market with a really strong, the biggest economy in the region and the strongest purchasing power. Yet it's not enough to create a company, let's say, that's like OpenAI. I'm not saying an OpenAI, but like something else, another 0 to 1 moment. It won't sustain, not by talent pool, not by resources, not by market, not by any means. To build a global company as well that can satisfy that economical sense and that critical mass to adoption, that needs a huge amount of effort. So investing domestically with a global market, I think, is the key. But at the same time, there has to be free movement of talent. We need to have a nice blend and a nice mixture of, let's say, supply chain, I would call it. A supply chain of people, a supply chain of consumers, a supply chain of even money. Diversity, it does breed quality at the end of the day. This is my very strong conviction.
Do you think pumping all that capital will attract people, more capital, and other companies to come to Saudi and create maybe funds and companies?
No doubt. I think the ecosystem is still nascent. It's incomplete. We still are trying to improve a lot of things in research. That's why we have RDI. I think RDI in multiple countries, actually, now in the region, we see a huge focus in RDI. We see new initiatives on deep tech. And if you look at OpenAI, for example, just as an example, the whole story starts in 1960 in Waterloo, Canada. And this is actually where the education starts, the white papers, the research. I think this is what we want to breed and not necessarily recreate.
Okay, Abdullah.
I agree with a lot of the points. I think with the premium residency, I think Saudi is focusing on talent and bringing talent from outside to help us, expedite the talent pool in Saudi. And then the focus will be domestic. Diversity is very important. I think Saudi is focusing on bringing a lot of talent from outside, and that will, at the end of the day, help us and grow the economy and grow the ecosystem as a whole.
Kaan, if you have control over that strategy, what would you do?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's a good time right now for Saudi to invest more in the local project. And this is, to be honest, what we are seeing for a while. Saudi in the region, they have the middle class. So I think this is the biggest difference in the rest of the countries. You know, like you can have a consumer market, you can have a lot of engineers organically in the country that would take influx of another 1 million or 2 million immigrants, engineers or researchers, whatever, because the country is around like 30 million. So that makes sense. And there's been a lot of like developments all around the country. To be honest, like AI sounds like any technology startup that we had like 15 years ago. I remember like when we started into 2010, everybody was saying that, oh, I'm going to sell shoes, but online, you know, like those kind of things. And obviously we will have AI. Like now, most of the pitches that we receive has AI in one way or another. One interesting thing is like Jamil also mentioned, like on the education side, and we've been seeing that a lot of most well-rated universities around the world is having their campuses in the GCC and in the region, which is a great thing to attract people. And being a Turkish guy, to be honest, like our region were like more homogeneous compared to US, where we used to have the old global tech things coming from. And when you go to San Francisco, even 10 years ago, you can see a founder from Lebanon, you can see a founder from Turkey, Germany, because everybody wants to go there. And actually that creates this diversity that kind of builds that kind of international or like global startup. So I think the timing is definitely right. I think the money will go into Saudi companies, but I don't think they are going to be built by Saudi people only. So this is what I've seen so far, and people are quite happy to move and feel welcomed in Riyadh or like other development zones in the Saudi right now.
What kind of companies are we going to see? The focus is on AI. AI is going to contribute 12% of the GDP in the country. What kind of companies are we talking about? I know, Kaan, you mentioned like all of the companies are now using or utilizing the AI technology, but are we going to see something different? Like, I don't know, Elon Musk said a few days ago that there would be more humanoids than people in 2040. And this is like 10 billion. Are we
I
going to
don't
see
think we
humanoid
have enough.
factories?
I don't think that we have enough place in the world to have more.
So
So,
anyway, please imagine the
yeah,
future. What do you see?
so I think the play here is, of course, we're going to have the generative AI companies. Of course, we're going to have the tools, the AI tools that startups are going to build up from the ground up. However, I think the big market, as I think we all know that there is a huge problem now internationally in terms of energy availability, energy cost, and I think we are very well positioned in Saudi to utilize the issue, and because we have a very good utilization, we have low energy costs. I think data centers require a lot of resources, and training AI models is very costly. I think this is where we can optimize, and this is where we can be a main player in the market, whether from a data center point, whether from chip makers. I think also we can have a very good position in that market too.
Jamil, please imagine the future and let us end. What do you see?
Okay, so I do believe that AI is a very big hype. I do believe that it's a bubble as well. I know we use the term AI since 1998 when we were talking about the automated game mechanics and the characters in video games. We called that AI back then. So looking how the term is being used and how machine learning and everything and data science and data management got all bundled into one terminology called AI does confuse the term and does confuse a lot of people, I think, as well. But it is a necessity to take something mainstream to do that. And taking things mainstream does bring funds to them so research can actually go, just like what happened with the RNA vaccines, to be honest. So what I imagine in the future is if I was just stick within the AI domain, I really think that this will cause a huge amount of pressure to change the structures of how processing works to begin with. Fundamentally, I see a lot of photonic computing research, I see amazing. We receive a lot of pitch decks of amazing photonic computers today and chips that install on current systems, on current servers, on PCIe. And I really believe that that will be the future. I think we'll see new chips in materials, incorporating graphene, incorporating even mycelium, mushrooms, in electronics now even, incorporating bacterial-based adhesives. And we've started seeing this. But also, I believe that there will be a huge decline in data centers. I'm actually very bearish about data centers. I see that when you look at Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, San Francisco, and Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, Waterloo, these hubs that I just mentioned have a lot of very smart engineers today, unaffiliated to maybe official research, that are trying to reinvent decentralized systems. I've seen amazing technologies in federated learning and edge AI that could actually take a huge chunk of the market already today from data centers and AI-based processing, but also introduce new levels of zero knowledge. I'm personally a very big fan of the open web. I think the Web3 hype is going to die and it gets replaced with the open web hype. I believe photonic computing will actually come into the hype, and I believe that neuromorphic computing could also join that. I don't know, but yeah, that's what I believe.
There's a lot to unpack here. Tell us the difference between Web3 and open web.
People who coined the term Web3 claim that Web3 is a web of privacy, a web of this, a web of that. And they compare it to Web2, because that in Web1 you can only read, Web2 you can read and write, and Web3 is a business model, a way of life now. And this is basically the explanation that they give us. I don't believe there has been ever a Web3, ever. It's not a web. It is a vertical or an industry of people that believes in decentralization. They believe in accessible and equitable sharing of resources, tokenizing them, and going and giving that to people across the board. It's a business model rather than you have the same ISP service provider, the internet service provider. You have the same databases, more or less, same systems, same computers. You just don't comply to ICANN, which is the government of the internet. That's the only difference. And sometimes you actually have to. You still index your decentralized blockchain on a centralized server at the end of the day, or you can't parse it, you can't get through it. Open web, what I believe is gonna now emerge is a web that focuses on zero knowledge and also on permissioning. I believe in open web, we will see personal sovereignty of data rather than national sovereignty of data. And I do believe that this will include central banks as well. And we see Brazil today making the biggest move towards that.
If I go back to my original question, Kaan, imagine the future. Let us in. What do you see? We've heard multiple things, including maybe the trend was just like there was digitizing of offline services.
Yeah.
Now it's AIing, if I can say, of everything, especially in manufacturing, in agriculture, and health tech, and biotech, etc. What do you see in the future you have in mind?
Again, like the AI itself is kind of like a term that we kind of use it for different purposes. I do like the AI where we kind of like delegate our like mundane tasks like an automation, because like automations are what we are looking for. I mean, this is how the tech created everything, like the scalable infrastructures, right? Like in today's time, like as a consumer, I do use AI often for my research because it includes a lot of like mundane like website visits and taking some notes. And I use like Perplexity for that. I use like ChatGPT. I use like few other like editors writing emails because it takes a lot of time, you know, like literally I'm just saying what I have in my mind and saying to AI, can you just finish it? And it does. So I think those kind of use cases are great. And I think we will have more use cases for any consumer that will come into entertainment too, because like basically we just need to serve those people, because I think the split of wealth is not going well, and it's going to be rougher moving forward. Like that's going like some people or companies getting more richer, and the regular people getting weaker and poorer. Like this is personally what I see in Europe. Everybody is like considering that cost of living crisis. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Like since COVID, this is how people are kind of feeling it. So some of the salaries are stagnant, and like you see some engineer salaries like going off the roof. Like it was general engineering, now it's AI. Even like the front end engineers are not super happy because they're not getting like the 6-digit checks they used to have. But I think this is how I see it. So on the consumer side, I think we are going to see a lot of like cheap things that people can actually enjoy your time. I don't know, maybe it's a dark vision of the future, like dystopian futures. But basically, this is how I see it going. In terms of like AI and deep tech, especially in the region, I think language and culture is the interface of AI. So I think you need like well-represented Arabic. And I think deep LLM models will come out of this investment. And it's a great thing because as a originally Turkish guy, I tried a lot of places with the Turkish infrastructure. And we had our initiative, I think from like 80s or 90s from Istanbul Technical University. They've been building this LLM model in the Turkish languages. It takes time and resources, like it's really hard. And Arabic, I think Arabic is like fifth the most spoken language, I think, like maybe 300 million people. So that would be a great use case because basically you need to control it. That would be a good thing and a bad thing. Obviously, like you still have OpenAI, which is building on many use cases of AI currently. But at least if you manage to control the interface, still you have a say in the discussion. Otherwise, it's just going to be that beast of a thing coming from San Francisco. I've been paying since they commercialized it, and we pay for our company too. So, I mean, it works. So this is how I see it. Like, we need to develop some parts of it, at least just to control the full supply chain. Otherwise, that there will be other companies coming from west or the east. They're going to take the cream of the economy.
I think NVIDIA announced that they open sourced their LLM as well. So maybe we can take that and customize it for the Arabic language. Jamie, what do you see in the future?
That's a good question. I was going to turn that around on you, so you beat me to it. I think, personally, I think you probably double down on being the engine, I think, for AI. So whether that be via semiconductors or data centers, I think to Abdullah's point, lean into the natural resource advantage that you have, whether that be space, cheap power. Is a sort of Saudi LLM company going to emerge to rival Meta, OpenAI, or Anthropic? No. But to Kaan's point, I think it does make a lot of sense, obviously, to cater to the Arabic population. It's sizable, and to ensure that there's an LLM that services that population, so that you don't get that sort of gap in terms of the obviously the gains that you make with AI. I think that's really important. Obviously, for those Arabic speakers, not to be left behind with the productivity gains that you're going to see from that. So it's important, obviously, that there is an LLM that there's a model in place to suitably cater to those needs. And then I think there's potential in the application there. I think probably more so. I think in a Saudi context, in terms of, or just generally the region as it pertains to AI. Again, AI super nebulous in terms of what do we actually. And we'll come to this when we talk about White Ventures in a minute. With their 100 million fund for AI, but what exactly does that mean? Like, how do we define an AI startup? What about you, Ahmad?
I see the typical sci-fi scene in my
mind.
Okay. The flying cars, or maybe humanoids everywhere.
I'm heartbroken because literally we never had to who were like skateboards from the Back to the Future. So I cannot imagine like the flying cars. Like that was my biggest thing. That's why I actually studied mechatronics. I was
Oh,
looking
wow,
for
okay.
Transformers. Yeah, I mean, that was my intention. And literally what we built was Ginger, you know, the two-wheel thing. That was the thing. So I don't trust people anymore. Like I have trust issues now.
But seriously, though, I see humanoids everywhere replacing labor, especially in Saudi, where there's a lot of labor from other countries. I see autonomous taxis. Saudi is really big, and traveling in between cities takes a long time, and it needs labor as well, drivers. So I think that would be replaced if they focus on that. Drug discovery, for example, personalized drugs, surgeries and procedures would be faster, more accurate, and they would need less maybe skilled doctors, because some of those AI machines would, or AI powered machines would replace doctors. I'm happy to talk about WA Adventures because they're focusing on early stage, and let's hear the news first and then talk more about this.
So their Saudi Aramco's venture capital arm, so they've earmarked $100 million to invest in early stage AI startups, as you mentioned, as they seek to diversify the economy. So the idea is, or the actual, in terms of board members, first, maybe that's a good place to start, because they've name dropped some impressive names there. So they're going to have experts on the board from Meta, Amazon, MIT, Oxford, and other institutions, etc. So in terms of context and background, it wide, so it's a 500 million VC firm established back in 2013, I believe. So manages a portfolio of about 70 startups, and it's not exclusively a regional mandate. It's they invest globally. In terms of, I guess, investments over the last couple of months, they've already met some, I guess, that would fall under the remit of AI. So and that we've covered as well. So one of those being California-based startup AI Explain, another as well being Rebellions, that Korean AI chip company too. Last year they would have participated in a round for Intella, they're obviously Egyptian deep tech startup, and they also invested in Tender's big Series A, I believe it was, earlier this summer too. I guess, yeah, maybe the first question is, what exactly is an AI startup? How do you define that?
It's a very big blanket term when it comes to what is an AI startup. AI is not an industry. AI is not a technology. AI is not large language models. AI is a field of study and research. And within that field of study and research, there are hundreds, if not thousands of things. So to have an AI startup, no AI is doing research really. I mean, most of startups are not doing research, and they are utilizing AI. So it's like the same discussion that was happening a few years ago between tech-enabled companies and tech-native companies. I think there is that differentiating factor. What is AI-enabled and what is creating new AI technologies, toolings, etc. For example, a company that is leveraging Python and, I don't know, Hugging Face and Llama to create a new product, that is AI-enabled, in my opinion. A company that has invented a new RAG that can ensure privacy of the users to feed information into an LLM without taking the information away. That to me is an AI startup.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, Jamil, because I had this question in mind. AI might not be a standalone sector. It's more of an enabling technology or a research that should integrate into various sectors. And as technology evolves rapidly, as we see, how should a fund like this, a huge fund for early stage companies focusing on AI, how should a fund like that adapt its thesis to stay relevant if new game-changing technologies emerge? Like, say, quantum computing in a few years might become the next big thing. How would such a fund adapt?
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's a big question. Like, I'm definitely supporting Jamil's argument because AI is a field of study. So when you think about like quantum computing, there will be requirements for cleaner data. So somebody can come up with a technology to provide that data that will become an AI company intrinsically because it's the part of the industry, I would say. for example, since we invest in most of fintech, insurtech, like obviously we've been seeing a lot of like fraud cases, and there are a lot of companies that we invested in. They utilize AI. They not necessarily develop the AI that they are using. They then at least add something to whatever technology or like the wrapper they're using, because like again, if you want to set up the deep tech of the stuff, it's a research project and it takes a lot of money. So most of the commercial applications, we think it's either a wrapper around a technology group so that people can utilize it, or they are bringing tools or services to increase or the betterment of the base of the technology. So I think we will see those kind of things, quite similar to what we've seen again in technology, where we've seen like a lot of like infrastructure tools. Like it might be Stripe, like on the payment sides, or AWS on the hosting side. So that would actually place AI as a industry, but no. This is what I'm not trying to say, but there will be a lot of like points going into AI centers. So this is how I see it. And for the rest of the cases, it will be quite similar to what we've seen 5 years ago. But then for the automations, we will keep using the term AI instead of technology enabled. Like that's why we are using technology, because we can do like multiple things at once. Like that's how we scale things. And with AI, technically some of the decisions can be done automatically, not just the action itself, but also the decisions. Like it's not decision tree saying that if it's A, it's B. AI is a complex problem-solving method. Honestly, not every commercial use case requires this kind of like decision tree. So without AI is fine. It just, people will keep saying that AI on an automated decision making.
Abdullah, you have a big seed stage fund as well. And you're kind of a generalist, but how do you see a fund the size of yours that's focused only on AI? Is AI a sector? And how can this fund adapt in the future with new technologies?
I think for them to tackle this, I think the idea is to categorize it as to have some kind of umbrella saying that any company that develop a unique solution that utilizes AI in some way is an AI company.
Great. And hey, if PIF is looking inward now, I think we should expect some big growth stage or late stage funds or pre-IPO funds in the country. Jamie, let's move on to the next story.
Yeah, let's move on to a funding round then. We're going to keep it in Saudi though. So let's chat about Saudi headquartered car subscription platform Invigo. So they've raised a 8 million Series A extension. So the funding comes from STV's newly launched NICE fund, which stands for Non-Dilutive Investment in Callable Equity. Understand the acronym and why they choose to call it the NICE fund as opposed to that.
It's nice of them to offer non-dilutive capital, you know.
Gosh.
I love that name.
So they're also joined by existing investors like Al Rajhi Partners, Arab Bank Ventures, SPV even, MEVP and C5. So in terms of background, on Invigo, founded in the UAE in 2019. So it's an app-based service that allows users in Saudi, UAE, Qatar to choose, drive, swap, and own cars. So they've raised over 22 million to date, hoping to reach profitability by the end of 2024. I guess the sort of headline sort of offering is its subscribe to own model, which has gained a lot of traction, I think, in Saudi specifically. So yeah, and in terms of, I guess, some context on NICE, so this was something launched by STV, I think it was back in January of this year. So the idea is that it is kind of a first of its kind funding structure in the region. So it's an alternative to traditional venture debt. So it's already been used by, for instance, STV's recent investment in Tabi. So I think the idea is, for context, they believe that, traditional venture debt, there's a couple of different challenges: full downside risk, fixed repayments, stringent covenants, and the benefits of the NICE funding is that there's no downside risk, it's revenue linked repayments, and no covenants. So be interested to get everyone's perspective on that, I guess, new instrument versus traditional venture debt, whether or not this is potentially the way forward.
Just regarding the acronym, actually NICE came out not just as a fund name, but it came out as a concept to challenge safe notes. It was actually, I don't recall the name of the the gentleman, but almost a year ago, one of the funds in the UK was talking about it, that somebody was trying to pioneer this. It came out and started emerging to actually provide a different way of providing capital. But this is the only thing I wanted to add. Please, Kaan, go ahead.
Actually, like my note was quite similar to that. Like as I kind of like learn more about life, then you realize the reason why San Francisco became a thing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, because there are so many different ways to do or build business or grow business. So obviously we are looking for venture capital most of the time when we are talking about startups. And there are so many different ways of funding, which is good. Like I do like the debt version. Obviously, in the UK, also it was kind of like quite popular with Silicon Valley banks, now HSBC Innovation Banking. Like it was quick access with low interest. And if you are doing a business, that's enough. Like can actually have the excess capital, and ideally you will make magic happen. So for every dollar you will get like $3, then there's no brain to do it. And obviously in VC, it's not just about the money. We always talk about like smart capitals and smart people as like managing partners, because ideally we should bring something with us. It might be expertise, it might be mentorship, but nice sounds really good. And I like this kind of development in an ecosystem because we need more types of funding, because the VCs, all in all, like we are good, but we have the same problems. So there might be some kind of like businesses, they might not be super exponential growth potentials, but they need to be in the ecosystem to grow. You know, like you might not like everything in an ecosystem, but you need it. Like the bacteria, like you might feel that, oh, this is gross, like, or like the birds feeding on, like, you know, that you need those. Like we were talking with a few of my
who's the
friends.
bacteria in your analogy? The VCs or the venture debt companies?
No. I think we are not there, but literally you need those. Like we were thinking, we were talking with a friend of mine. So in the US, like there are so many companies with an IP and a failed business. You know, like they are trying to liquidate the assets in the companies that might be more valuable to other companies. So that might be the bacteria. But for that, you need enough failed companies in Saudi first, like maybe 400, 500 failed companies, then you will get to see more things happening. For me, I was kind of lucky that I worked at Yandex, the Russian tech company. Now it's a little bit hard to talk about Russia overall, but in 2010s, they just did their IPO. Most of my friends became millionaires because they were just getting their like equity from the company. And then you realize like how actually organically tech grows, because that how it happened, like with US, right? Like the treacherous seven.
Propagates. There's like a ripple
Exactly.
effect.
Yeah, like the treacherous seven story. Like you need to have those people who actually made good engineering, did good, and they got money. And then they can actually give money to someone else quite easily, because most of my millionaire friends, it is not the same that when you imagine a millionaire person, you know, like they were wearing sandals, t-shirts, they were just cool. They didn't care if they had like 2 million or 5 million in their bank accounts. They were already happy with their salaries. And it was the same. Most of their moms were just saying, hey, you need to buy a house in Moscow. I just don't want to have this anxiety. And that's what the rest of the money is like, okay, I'm trying something good, something nice, the person next to it. And they gave like 100K to their friends because they've seen it, like that cycle. You cannot accelerate it inorganically. That's why like bringing a lot of people to the country is great. Maybe my question to you guys, like the valuations in the region, because I don't know, like a few years ago, it was kind of outrageous. I don't know how you feel about it. Like now, Europe is very buyer's market. I'm not saying either side is good, but the valuations are kind of dropping. Obviously, if you have oversubscription, it's a different case, but it is tough. How do you feel like Series A 8 million sounds like a legitimate round? Because I've been hearing like seed rounds with like 15 million. So what do you think about that?
So I think the question about valuation dropped. So I think back in 2022, it was completely insane. I think the valuations were way too high. It was a tech boom at that time. It was a tech bubble basically, and it was specifically a startup bubble. I think there was a lot of VCs coming up, a lot of family offices wanting to set up some VCs, some VC kind of structure. They wanted to come in and invest into the startups, and there was a lot of money in the region, right? So I think that was back in 2022. 2023 came, I think the end of 2022, it completely changed, shifted. Valuations dropped by, like, I would say minimum 40-50% from peak. Yeah, I think definitely dropped from peak 50%, to say the least.
Just one thing, I think in
yeah.
UK it's the same. Like I think overall Series A and seed round valuations dropped like 40%. In London, I mean, that was just the report that we contributed. So yeah.
I think this is worldwide, by the way. I think even the US startup valuations at that time in 2022 reached an all-time high, and we've seen it in public markets. We've seen many companies get slashed down by half, like though. So I think in terms of valuation, I think it's a normal cycle. I think this happens in every region. It happens in every time. It's a cycle. Things go up.
And the
There's a
market
bubble.
corrects itself. Yeah.
Exactly, and then the market corrects itself, and then it goes back up. I think this is very normal. This is our industry. I think this is our ecosystem. However, in terms of be nice, I think as you guys said, it's good to have different financing instruments coming into the region. I think one of the points, it's an alternative. It's a Sharia compliant alternative to venture debt, and I think that's a good thing in the region, and it's very needed. And this is what might be attracting a lot of companies to switch to that alternative other than the venture debt that's happening right now in the region, at least.
I just add one thing about the valuation discussion. I believe that we always get distracted between the difference between valuation and price. Valuation is not a price of a company, and valuation is how much money do I need to put in this company and still get really good return and allow this company to go as long as it could to actually raise and still keep the founders in control. I mean, that is kind of the genesis of the thinking around valuation. But then there are also considerations. It has to be reasonable, as you all mentioned. When when there is rarity in the market, the valuations are up. Same thing like the stock market. So when it comes to SaaS, we can speak about like valuations as a benchmark. When it comes to everything else, and now as we are talking today about AI, that we can't even pinpoint one thing about AI, it's just impossible. It's just impossible to say valuations are high or low, like in a general way or in the time frame.
I love it when I see innovation and the VC model itself. I remember when I got into venture in 2009, the term sheet was long and complicated. There were books written about the term sheet and how to understand the term sheet, and from the founder perspective, from the VC perspective. And then came the convertible notes, simpler. And then the safe notes, way simpler. And then the post-valuation safe notes. And then now we have the NICE, which is a combination of convertible debt and revenue-based financing and callable equity, etc. I love these innovations, and I hope we can contribute to the global VC model as STV did. They created kind of a Sharia compliant version of NICE. Well, with that, thank you so much, Jamil, Kaan, Abdullah, for joining us today. We geeked out about the future and the sci-fi vision of Saudi in, I don't know, 20 years from now. And Jamie, thank you so much for joining us from the airport. We really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.